Okay, hello everybody. I'm going to go ahead and get started so I can tell you as much as I can tell you in an hour and then get you out of here. But I'm so glad to be here to talk about the amazing program that I got to be a part of. I'm so glad to have lots of friends here. I have students, former students. I have one of my very sweet friends that went on this adventure with me. So she's going to talk to you a little bit too. This is Sheila. And then great friends and family, I'm so glad you're all here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our journey. It's really neat how this came about. So Sheila and I were both Regional Teachers of the Year, and as part of that, we were awarded like a scholarship to go on this program. And so we spent what was supposed to be 1 year learning all about Australia. And then it turned into COVID and about 3 years of we might go this summer, we might go next summer, we might go in 2025, who knows when it's going to be. So we got to, I think it really was more beneficial to us because we were able to learn even more in our time together. But Zooming is a little bit hard between here and Australia, as my friends all found out when I was calling them at the wee hours of the morning. So the company called Go Global NC is the company that supported us on our journey, and so we got to learn a lot before we went, and then we got to see it in person. So it was really the best way that it could possibly work out. And that's one thing that we try to do for our students, right? We try to tell them everything we can tell them, but actually experiencing it and going somewhere and being there in person, getting to hold the koala instead of just read about a koala is very different. So we had a great time. And I'm going to refrain from calling it a trip, and I'm going to call it a program because that's really what it was. It was a very long, year-long, almost 3 years, that we studied before we got to go, and I'll tell you a little bit about all the adventures. So one thing that I learned that I absolutely loved and that I have carried in my heart and brought back with me is that every place we went, every presentation we saw, every group of people that we met always did an acknowledgement of country. So Australia has been really working on reconciliation with the Indigenous and Aboriginal people. And so everywhere you go, they acknowledge the land of the custodians that had that land before them. So colonization and all of the things that have taken place since definitely put a bad taste in their mouths, and they'll talk about that too, but they really want to give back and acknowledge and honor the people that were on the land first. So just like in the United States, I'll show you a map of it next, but this is the map of the Aboriginal. So instead of the states on the map, they have shown you all the Aboriginal tribes and land as it was originally. And so their acknowledgements of country acknowledge each of those tribes that had that land, just like we should do here. And so this is my acknowledgement of country today. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. Together we gather today on Cherokee and Shawnee land. And this is the tribe map without the states. So that's something that I brought back that I try to do when I present or talk about the importance of. And we learned the difference between acknowledgement and welcome to. So when we first arrived, which I'll tell you about in just a couple slides, we were invited or we were welcomed by someone that was in the tribe, someone that was Aboriginal. So they can welcome us because it's their land, but I cannot do that for them or for us here since I don't have Native American blood. So I give you an acknowledgement instead of a welcome. So that was something that I didn't know about and didn't really understand, but the culture there was so rich and they talked to us so much about the difference between those two things. It was really neat. So we're going to start with another thing that we learned on our program, and that was a dilly bag. Have any of you ever heard of a dilly bag? Okay, so dilly bags were once the woven satchels that Aboriginal people collected their food, whatever they gathered, and they kept it in there. Today, it's more metaphorical, and so your dilly bag is the things that make up who you are, what you have gathered as a person, or who you've become or want to become. So they used to be made with grass or bark or other fibers, dyes, anything that's very beautiful and woven. I am not a weaver, so I brought you plain brown bags, but you get to decorate them and make them what you want to. So I'm going to hand each of you one if you want one. You don't have to do this activity if you don't want to. Do you want to help? And then I'm going to pass around some sticky notes that you can put words or ideas, anything that talks about who you are as a person, what makes you that person. These are your positives. So you can think about words like bravery or courage. Sorry, all the people who didn't get one, including me. You can still write things, and then you can put them on some kind of video bag. All right, so you can decorate whatever it is. It could be a notebook, it could be a bag of sorts, it can be an envelope. If somebody wants this envelope, you can have it. So your dilly bag is the great things about you. So these are examples of dilly bags that were made in Australia. And so anything positive, anything that you have inside you that makes the world a better place, those are all things that fill up our dilly bag that we carry with us every day, whether it's metaphorical or real life. So here are the major cities that we got to visit. We started in Melbourne and next went to Cairns, which looks like Carnes. We got corrected several times with our accent. And then we came back down to Sydney for most of the second week.
I would just like to say, because lots of people ask me,
Yes.
that's Tasmania below it.
Yes.
So Tasmania is someplace that lots of people have heard of, so that's Tasmania. We didn't get to go to Tasmania, but there.
We didn't, but we saw Tasmanian devils,
We did see Tasmania,
which was
yeah.
really neat. And they were nothing like the cartoon or what you think they are. They're the sweetest, cutest little fur balls with these little teeny tiny ears. They're precious. Thank you, Sheila, for telling. So here were our major events that happened in each place. I don't want you to read them all, but just so they're there, we went to 3 different states out of the 7. And with each one, we saw both city, we saw rural places, we saw schools from each of the states that we went to. And so I'll get to show you a little bit about each of those that we went to. So the 15th was the day we left, and we had no idea what we were in for. We left from Charlotte and flew to California, and by that time I was already tired of flying and did not know I was about to get on the longest plane ride of my whole entire life. So it was really neat because we left on the 15th and we didn't arrive there till the 17th, but really it wasn't 2 days, but really it was 2 days. And so it was the never-ending journey, and the way home was even longer, but I'll tell you that story in a little while. So when we got to California, of course, it was 3 hours difference, and then when we got to Australia, it was 14 hours difference. And since we crossed the international date line, we had missed a whole day, and we couldn't figure out where that day went, and so we arrived in the morning in Melbourne, and as soon as we got there, they put us on a bus and took us a tour of the city. So we were like, but wait, it's nighttime, we should be sleeping, but it wasn't, it was morning. And so we got to see these amazing buildings, we got to take pictures, we got to see, everything is just so beautiful, and there's lots of art, lots of wonderful architecture. And then we got to eat our first dinner with our Welcome to Australia, and several of our friends fell asleep at the dinner table because we were all confused about what time it was, and we were exhausted from traveling, but we had a great first day just getting acclimated and figuring out where we were and seeing the city of Melbourne. It really is beautiful. So this is the day we got our official welcome to the country, and it was really powerful because we learned a lot about the difference in the flags. So the gentleman that welcomed us to country, their flag is this flag. So he's Indigenous, he's a proud Indigenous man, and he wanted this flag to be represented by the country. However, the country recognizes this flag as their flag and aren't always willing to fly both of them. So that was one thing that we learned a lot about. There's also a Torres Island flag, which is a lot harder to find, unfortunately, because all 3 of those need to be represented, and there were only maybe 2 places that we went to that had all 3 flags. On the 19th, we did our first school tour, and this was a place called Kiosk, and it was a school unlike any school I've ever been to. They had resources unlike anything that we have in the United States, of any school that I've been to. It was a STEM school, but they had labs, they had all the technology, they had just a really enriched curriculum, and so we could see right off that the money put towards schools there and their education was abundant. In fact, there was one place that we went to that said we have abundant resources, which is something I've never said in any school that I've ever worked at or been to or visited here. So priorities are very much for education in Australia. We got to go through a market, and you'll see fresh kangaroo, which we were all both shocked and surprised and maybe a little bit like, oh no, to see. In the evening, there was a special performance of both Harry Potter and Hamilton were playing while we were there. And so we couldn't believe the luck, but even though we were like falling asleep as we were watching it, we were all so tired, but it was worth going. It was awesome.
Which one did you guys watch?
We went to Harry Potter. Yeah. Well, I mean, my group did, but lots of people went to Hamilton too. And the tickets, so like the money systems were very different, so we were trying to convert it and figure out like, are these really good prices for these seats? And they were really good prices for those seats because we expected it to be a lot more. The next day was my birthday, so to get to spend a birthday in Australia was really neat. But it was a travel day, so it was a super hard day. We started out on the beach, so I got to touch the Southern Ocean, which I'd never been anywhere near before. I got to brush my hair with the state flower, which is a wattle, which is pretty neat. We got to see, these were my favorite birds the whole time. These are lorikeets. They were just absolutely like the most vibrant colors. The picture doesn't do it justice at all.
It was, however, only 41 degrees.
It was freezing.
So it was winter down there. So it was,
yes.
It was 41 degrees.
In the morning when we woke up, they said, our tour guide said, please make sure you wear your jacket in the morning. It's going to be -3. And so my brain went to like -3, but also it's in Celsius, so that was a little, it wasn't quite that bad, it was like 30 degrees Fahrenheit or 32. So we were chilly because I packed more for, even though I knew it would be winter, I thought we would be like 50s, 60s, which we were at some parts, but not that morning.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't our style day because everybody just put on like all the clothes they had. It's just like, okay, I'm just putting on all my clothes.
Yeah, we were not very professionally dressed. We were bundled. We were very cold. And packing for 17 days was also quite a feat. And we had certain requirements for like how much our luggage could weigh and things. So I took out 2 of my sweaters before I left because I was like, surely I'll be fine. Like, I won't need those 2 sweaters. But I needed those 2 sweaters. So we also went to a secondary college, which is like a high school in their terms. And these kids had the coolest experience. They had a woodworking class. They had they started cooking like in elementary school, and they took cooking or home ec, what we would consider home ec, all the way through 10th grade. Like you had to. It was a requirement. And so they were making like some chocolate chip 3-tiered muffins that were like just smelling so good. And they were wearing their trackies, which we learned were like their tracksuits. And so one of our friends asked, what do you call that in the United States? And we said, sweatpants. And they said, ew. Like, what a weird, why would you call it like sweat? But I have some funny words at the end too, because that was one of the best times I had, was just picking up on like the local lingo and the way that they worded things. It was so fun. So I did not get up for sunrise. I borrowed this from a friend. I would have claimed it if Sheila wasn't here, but she knows I did not get up. But when we arrived in Cairns, it was the most beautiful sunrises and sunsets over this is also the Southern Ocean, but it was a bay. Phillips Bay, St. Phillips maybe? But anyway, it was gorgeous. We had all kinds of friends getting up, and our phones started going off at like 4:30, 5 o'clock, and people sending pictures, which I was really grateful for, about 8, but not really that early in the morning. The next day we got to visit Queensland Department of Education and hear all about their schools there. They are the most rural of the schools, and there's in fact one school at least, maybe 2, that you have to get to by helicopter. So imagine, like, you can't just hop over there, you can't get in your car and go. So the Torres Islands are so like vast and far apart that you have to take helicopters to get to the schools. So they definitely don't have teachers that come to work there without incentives, right? You either live there and you work there because you're from there, or like they say, we need a teacher, would you come if we gave you this, this, and this? So some of their teachers get free housing. Some of their teachers get major bonuses for going there. Some of their teachers, yeah, they get,
master's programs are paid.
yeah, all their schooling's paid for if they want to take extra classes. Like the incentives are real. And so they were trying to see how many of us would stay.
They are heavily recruiting for our group.
Yeah.
Heavily recruiting.
Like handing applications, like, yeah, and talking about getting our visas real quick. So, I put this picture in because I love this. They had bins, trash bins everywhere, and so their philosophy was, if there's litter and things are not getting in trash bins, then we need more trash bins so that the proximity of the bin will make you want to put it in the bin, all your trash. And so they decorate them, they make them beautiful, and usually there's 4. So they recycle, they have the trash, they have the mixed stuff and the compost. Like, it's just all so environmentally friendly, and they really like make it a priority, and they make it close enough where you feel like I can put it in there, and they have signs where it explains to you what goes in which one. So that was one big part that they talked about, was just the environmental kind of concern that they have.
Maggie,
Yes.
what is the little animal on the right?
Isn't he so cute? This is a wallaby, which is like a kangaroo but smaller. And we saw him on the side of the road. So again, it was like, we thought we were going to get to Cairns by 7. We ended up not getting there till 11:30. We had flown for 3 hours, so we're driving. It was actually like coming up here. It was like 89 Mountain or Elkin Mountain, and we were winding back and forth, and we were just like falling asleep. And then the tour bus driver came over the intercom and said, "Wallabies, wallabies!" And so everybody woke up and went to their windows, and we tried to spot all the cute little wallabies. But the animals were one of my favorite parts. And the books, they were great libraries in each of the schools that we went to. Lots of resources. So that was our day that day. And then this was another rural school that we went to before we did the reef. So this is our presentation about the reef, and I have some materials and some ways that they preserve it. So this company that we got these shirts from is a nursery that grows the coral back and then transplants it back into the reef, I guess. And so I have a poster too of how that works if you want to see it. But they actually have coral farms. So they put the coral here and they grow it just like we would grow tomato vines or whatever, and then they put it back in so that it can keep living and keep growing. So you're welcome to look at this at any point too. But that was something that we had studied a lot about, and to get to see it in real life, like the pictures don't even do it justice. You can see you can see the beautiful fish, but like they don't even look like that, do they, Sheila? Like, I don't know if it's the underwater camera or just like our eyes can't make it work, but this turtle was the sweetest. We saw all kinds of fish. Sheila's in this picture right here. We were getting ready to snorkel, and the photographer threw out some food, and so all the fish came up to us so that they could get them in the picture. And then we got to feed some piranhas on the other side of the boat, and I said, what keeps them on that side of the boat? Like, how do we know that they're going to stay over there and not come over here? And there wasn't a really clear answer for that, but I was glad that somehow they did. We got to ride in an underwater submarine, so it was clear on the bottom, and so you sat down underneath the water, and then it took you really close to the reef. So that was one of my favorite things from that day.
It was like being in Finding Nemo.
Yes.
Like, it was like swimming in Finding Nemo. And then there was even a drop off. Like,
there was a drop off.
At the edge of where we could snorkel, there was a drop off.
And Sheila went to the drop
I
off.
went to the drop off.
Yeah.
But I stayed on the safe side.
Yeah, on the safe side. So it was breathtaking. It was beautiful. The people there are so passionate about it that they work just tirelessly to try to get as much of it built back as they can. So we asked him, like, does us being here today, like, mess anything up? And so I think the part we were in was obviously touristy, but he said, the man on the picture before said, you can't love something until you see it. And that's what he kept telling us, like, until you see how beautiful it is, and until you realize, like, where you are and what it's doing for the ecosystems and all of that. Like, you just can't love it until you get to experience it. So for us to get to go and do that was pretty huge, and we enjoyed it. The next day was another great day. We got to go to the rainforest. This is the day we got to hold the koala, and I'm going to embarrassingly show you my picture, but you're going to laugh at it because I was a little overwhelmed with my feelings about this koala. And so I was cheesing pretty hard and about to cry. So this is my koala that I got to hold, and he was precious. We also had to run. So we got to ride in the sky rail, kind of like Tweety Railroad, but like 100 times higher and further, and I was terrified the whole way up. And once we got there, we wanted to stop at each of the stops. So we wanted to see the waterfall, and we wanted to see all the trees. And so by the time we got there, we only had about 15 minutes to get on our lunch bus. So we were like, lunch or koalas? So we ran as fast as we could to the koalas to get to hold one, and then we finally made it to lunch at some point. But you can see koalas here. This is a kangaroo. This is the little Tasmanian devil. It's hard to see, but he's precious. We got to see crocodiles both in their little habitat and in the water when we took our duck tour, or duck boat. Barren Falls was beautiful. It was just, it was one of the tallest waterfalls I've ever seen. And then the cassowary is one of the most dangerous birds in Australia. And the ecosystem of the rainforest can't live without the cassowary. So if they all go extinct, there's like over 100 species in the rainforest that can't survive because what they eat and then digest and then waste grows so many of these things, and no other animal can do it, which we found fascinating. So they were telling us how we have to protect them, but then they also told us like they're the most deadly and they can absolutely kill you in like one felt swoop. You would be gone because they're so dangerous. But it was really neat. We got to see lots of animals that day, just being up that high and seeing all of the...
It's one of the oldest rainforests.
It was one of the oldest ones. Do I have that in here? Yeah, 180 million years old. So that in itself, like, was just amazing that we were there to breathe in the air and see all the sights. We got to ride this rickety little train back down the mountain. We were a little bit scared about it, but it was beautiful. So one of the things in the rainforest, we got to meet this Aboriginal group. So I'm going to show you just a quick little video of their dance. Got to hear them play in their didgeridoos, and it was probably one of the most authentic experiences that we had. They taught us how to throw our boomerangs, so we each had a lesson in boomerang throwing. And so, you know, I was tempted to like frisbee it or something, but when you throw a boomerang, if you're right-handed, you go to 12 o'clock on the clock, and then you shift over to 1 o'clock, and this is how you throw it. So you go as hard as you can at 1 o'clock. If you're left-handed, they have a different boomerang for you, and you go from 12 to 11 before you throw it. So we got lots of practice with boomerang throwing. This one was actually painted by an Aboriginal artist, and so a lot of, like I said, their reconciliation and making sure that the Aboriginal people are getting kind of recognized and getting, you know, what they're owed for things that they make. They sell these in all kinds of different shops. So I have 2 of them here that you guys can look at, but these are really neat. I would not suggest throwing these. This was our last travel day within the country. We traveled from Cairns down to Sydney, and as you're flying in, it's really hard to see, but the Sydney Opera House is right here, so you're going over Darling Harbour, Sydney Harbour, and so flying in was really neat. This was going back over the reef where we went earlier. This was the only plane where we had Wi-Fi, so we kept getting on planes and not knowing if we were going to have like entertainment or what, you know, be able to text our friends, because a lot of us didn't do the international data plan. So that was always a fun thing of when we could talk to people or not. So I was impressed with that airplane. And AIM was our next day. So AIM is an Aboriginal and Indigenous mentoring program. And that's where this t-shirt came from, or this sweatshirt. This sweatshirt is the whale story. And so part of all the Aboriginal work is telling the story about how the world was created. So a student that went to AIM designed this, and this is the story of the whale and how the whale came to be and how it made the world. So there's also lots of them, like all the rivers were created by snakes. And so they tell the snake story about how the snake slithered through, and that's what created the water to fill in between the mountains. So really some beautiful folk tales, or what we would consider folk tales. What that's their belief system. And it was just beautiful the way they would tell it and the way that it all mattered and it formed who they were. So we met lots of great students that day. I had Elva. She was a grade 6 student. Or year 6 is how they say it, and she was in 6th grade, how we say it. So we got to hang out with her for the day and go through a lot of exercises with her. And we're going to do, well, I'll tell you about one, and then at the end if we have time. What we created was a gratefulness circle, and so we each wrote one thing we were grateful for, and we all put it in the circle. So something that stuck with us that day.
Did you put Alva?
I did put Elva that day. I was grateful to meet her. So we put it in the circle, and it was something that we wanted to stay in our hearts. And then someone else got to pick that back up from the circle. So that was really special that you gave it, and then someone else took it with them to hold in their heart. And then we wrote it on the ground as our connection to the earth. And so I just love all the activities that they walked us through, had this beautiful connection back to nature and how the earth is part of who we are, and it was just beautiful. Did you do that activity too?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really neat.
What is that? Is that sticks in the middle?
Yeah, so the sticks held down all of our papers because we were outside and it was blowing. So just another way they use nature to use
I will
ground all
say
of
this,
it.
it was middle schoolers. Some of the people were middle schoolers, so not all of the things that got put in the circle were necessarily
Yours.
appropriate. I mean, so middle schoolers are middle schoolers. It really doesn't matter where you're going. I had a fella, and he told me that was a smiley face. I'm like, dude, that is not a smiley face. I know what you were trying to draw. So that's what was neat about going to the schools, is so many things about the students were so similar.
Kids are kids are kids. It was really neat.
Kids are kids are kids.
Yeah,
That was really
it was beautiful though to see it and to see how similar we are, but also the differences in the places. It was powerful. We got to go to Bondi Beach one night and jump in the iceberg pool. So the pools are here, and then I've got a video if it'll play on the next one, maybe. And then you can see the ocean come into the pool. So the waves just come up and splash in. And so again, it was winter time there, and it was absolutely freezing. We tried to get into the sauna after we got into the pool, and apparently we held the door open too long, and so they were screaming at all the American people that don't know how to get into a sauna, and so we were very uncomfortable, but we got in there finally and warmed back up because we were frozen. But that was a cool experience. And the cliffs over here, you can also see the water crashing in, but this is just this cool seaside town. And you can walk through the town. There's all kinds of restaurants. It was a cool little beach spot.
During the day, lots of surfers.
Lots of surfers. Yeah, it's one of the most famous beaches in the world, I think. The next day was my favorite school. We got to go to Briar Road Public School, and they just, if I could go work there, that's the school I would choose, just because they had the most beautiful culture. You can see they're flying all 3 flags, so they recognize and appreciate and honor all the students that come to their school. Very inclusive. They again had lots of resources. They had their own acknowledgement of country in this design, and it was on their clothes, it was in their classrooms. Each student had their own plan and ways that they could earn stickers as they learned about their culture and all of the ways that they could honor the people that are their ancestors. And then that night we were able to go to the opera at the Opera House, and it was not my favorite thing. The dressing up was super fun, going out with everybody was super fun, but we got into the opera and it was loud and they were singing in a language that we didn't understand. I know, but it was not for me. I appreciated the talent it took to do that and the culture of it. Have any of you ever been to an opera?
Yes.
Do you love the opera? I mean, it's just so different, but it was such an experience. I would go again, but it was bizarre. I wish I could have understood it the way that some people appreciated and understood it. And then these are the sweet little students at that school, singing in their native language. It was beautiful. We were moved to tears. They were so proud of themselves. They just couldn't stand it. It was one of the most beautiful things of the whole trip, was just appreciating their language, and they had practiced that song for us, and they were so proud of themselves, and it was really powerful to see them embrace their culture and heritage, which is something that we don't always get to do here, I feel like, and something that's not always as appreciated as it could be. So this was really special for us to get to see and be a part of.
I got a question back to the seeing that.
Yeah.
Was the opera in Italian or was it in their voice?
It was
Okay, that's what threw me because I'm like, well,
I could have listened to that for hours and hours.
okay.
Hey, in the opera, they had the subtitles. They had subtitles.
They did, but if you're looking at the subtitles, you were missing everything that was happening down below. So it's like you either watch the people or you watch the subtitles. So I did some of both, but
Okay.
not my thing.
But just seeing those kids, I thought was
No.
what was the opera, and that's what okay.
Yeah, no,
That
it was
would've been really
beautiful.
cool.
It really would have been neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, the next day had, I think, 2 more schools that we got to see. We had one that was a private school and one that was a public school, which is a lot like here. And it was that was the private school, not because it was private, but just because of the way that it was made up. They did not have any Aboriginal or Indigenous, so we didn't get a welcome to or an acknowledgement of country. So we asked them why, because everywhere else it had been such a big deal that we had gotten used to it, we really appreciated it, and they said, well, technically we don't have to do it because we don't have anybody here that identifies. And so our question, we just had some great conversations about why aren't there Aboriginal or Torres Strait people here? Are they not invited? Is it not as inclusive? Those kind of questions that would come up. And then the other one that we visited was very much inclusive and very much like culturally diverse and welcoming. And so, we had a little bit of both of those things. The first school that we went to that did have Aboriginal people had one of the highest percentages of refugees that we had seen while we were there, because it was in Sydney, because it was a big city, a hub. There were a lot of refugees there, and they welcomed them just as much as they welcomed the Aboriginals or the Torres Strait Islander people. And our last day, we got to go to Canva, which was, I didn't know that Canva was an Australian company, but they gave us some really cool things. And we use Canva a lot, like my job now, I use Canva a lot to design newsletters and such. Actually, the flyer for this I designed on Canva. We got to use it that day and learn about it. It was really neat. And then we got to have dinner at the Opera House, kind of at the bottom where you're looking out over the harbor and the bridge. So that was a really beautiful, nice way to end our time together. And then the next day was a Saturday, so of course we couldn't visit schools, so we had one more day to pack in everything we wanted to do in Sydney. And so my roommate decided she wanted to go to the reptile park. And so we saw snakes and turtles and crocodiles, and I was scared out of my mind, but it was absolutely worth it. This is Elvis. And our sweet, sweet tour guide from the reptile park got into his, I don't know what you call, like his area, yeah. And he banged his stick on the side of the pond that he swims in, and he called him. So he banged it on there, and he said, Elvis! And so Elvis comes swimming up. And he took one of our cell phones. He said, who has a good cell phone? Who takes good pictures? And he was that close. Like, this is not Zoom. Like, he put the camera right in front of the crocodile's face, and we thought, oh my gosh, he's going to get his arm bitten off. But that's Elvis. This is Hugo in the bottom. This was Elsa, the koala. And the crocodile wasn't named, but he was sweet. He was very sweet.
Did y'all also a big old snake?
We did hold a big snake, a Burmese python, and I was terrified. At this place in Australia, they milk the venom out of the snakes. And so we got to go in the room and watch the snakes. And so the fangs are here, and the man that's holding the little container where the venom goes is here. And so he taps like this, and the fangs luckily sometimes land on outside of his fingers, sometimes don't. And so the venom then goes into the container and they catch it, and then that's what they make anti-venom out of. So because Australia has so many deadly animals, snakes and spiders and lots of things that want to kill you, jellyfish, they collect it and then they make all the anti-venom at this place that's world renowned. It's the Australian Reptile Park. And so we got to see the milking, see the venom in the container, and then they take it and they make anti-venom out of it so that if somebody does get bitten, like our guy, he had just had to have anti-venom like the month before because the snake bit him instead of biting the outside of his finger. So like he's like, I just want to help save people. He said, I wasn't smart enough to be a doctor, so this is the only way that I can help people and like make sure they don't die when they get bitten by a snake. So noble but terrifying. They milk spiders with a dropper, so it's not quite as high stakes, but still like gives me the heebie-jeebies. No one wanted to take us to the reptile park also because it crossed state lines. So like think about where we live and we can just go over to Virginia like really easily, but it's not quite as easy or maybe not quite as worth it for the cab drivers, Ubers. So we got a friend of our tour guide to take us there. But it was totally worth the trip. It was about an hour away, and it was amazing. So we had a great day that day, and then we started our long journey home. These were flags in the airport, which again I thought were very inclusive, very cultural. It was a beautiful display. We were delayed twice in Sydney. And they kept giving us gift cards like, we're sorry you're delayed, here's a gift card. We're sorry you're delayed, here's a gift card. And so we knew we had a connecting flight in Los Angeles, which we definitely missed by that time. So when we got to LA, we said, you know, will you rebook us? And they were like, sure, how's tomorrow? No, please, like, let us go home. And one of the people said, do you think we could get a gift card? And they laughed at us. They were like, we don't do that here. We were like, welcome back to America. But a couple of adventurous friends of mine were like, let's not sit in the airport all day. So we went to Venice Beach and we went to see the Hollywood sign. So we had our own little California adventure because it was about a 12-hour layover once we got back to LA when we just wanted to come home and see our babies. So we enjoyed California while we were there, and then we finally made it home. It took over 48 hours, but again, it was like going backwards in time. So when we left Sydney, we actually got to California at the same time we left, which was mind-blowing. So we left, we were supposed to leave at 7, we ended up leaving maybe 10 or 11. We got to California at 10 or 11 on the same day, which was like, how does that happen? Because we had been on a plane for 15 hours. So that was really neat. So I'm going to tell you all my favorite words. I'm going to let you guess what they mean. All right, Sam and Margot, are you ready? Okay, this is super fun. All right, has anybody heard the term, it's a dog's breakfast? No? Oh, good. Okay, so it's a dog's, do you want to guess before I tell you?
No.
It's a dog's breakfast means like it's a hot mess is how we would say it, or it's a complete like cluster, like nothing's working, or everything's in shambles. So we were talking with one educational group, and he said, we asked a question about how something works, and he said, oh, it's a bit of a dog's breakfast. And he could tell we were all confused. He was like, y'all don't say that? Or he didn't say y'all, we said y'all. Several times we got made fun of for the y'all. They would say, y'all? What does that mean? Bob's your uncle. Have you heard this one?
No.
So they would say, so in a sentence like, it's like a kind of like a duh moment, or like a, well, I'll be darned is how we would say it in like country slang. But it's like, oh, Bob's your uncle. Like, oh, Bob's your uncle. What about Kendi? Has anybody heard of Kendi? You want to take a guess, school people? You know this one. Kindergarten. So they shorten everything. And if they can, they put an IE on the end of it. So instead of saying the whole word kindergarten.
What were the slots?
Oh.
when you could go gamble.
Yeah. One of our friends also had a birthday while we were there, and she went to the casino and won a bunch of money.
Yeah, we went to the casino.
Yeah.
They call it, they put an IE, it's like they
They
shorten
did.
everything.
Crankies?
Yeah, something like that.
Cranky. Something like you know, you pull down and do it. What about a tall poppy? Anybody?
Coffee.
No? Good guess though.
That's a tall black.
Yeah,
Tall
yeah,
black
tall
is a
black
tall.
and then a white. What was the white?
Short white.
Short white,
Tall
yeah.
black and short white.
So a tall poppy is when you have a big head. So you would use it to explain a person that's very arrogant or, you know, thinks they're all that. You would just say, oh, what a tall poppy. Lollies might be an easy one. Yeah, good job. So I brought Nellie back some lollies. Everything though is lolly. Like we would use lolly for lollipop, but they use it for everything.
Or candy.
I went into, I got like the night of the harbor dinner, like I guess we'd just been out in the air or whatever, and I got like a little sore throat. It was not COVID. It was not. I tested. And so I went to the store and I said, could I have some cough drops? And he had no idea what that was. And so I just went and looked through the shelf and I found like Werther's Originals, you know, the like hard candies. And he was like, I don't think that's what you want. That's a lolly. And I was like, I just need something for my throat. And so in Australia they're called soothies. So I bought some soothies instead of cough drops, which I like so much better. Soothie. Sounds nice. Heaps is pretty common, maybe. Lots of something. So they never say lots. Like I never heard it the whole time I was there, but everybody talked about heaps of stuff. So, oh yeah, we've got heaps of money. Or we've got, you know, heaps of whatever they were talking about. It was always heaps, which I thought was so cool. What about a toasty? Do you tell us? Yeah, I was so obsessed with toasties, like I'll never go back to calling it what it really is.
Grilled cheese.
It's a grilled cheese. Any kind of grilled sandwich is a toasty. So the first morning on the plane, I don't even know what time it was. We were flying over there. It had to be the middle of the night. I was asleep, but I woke up to toasty? Toasty? Anybody want a toasty? And so they would go up and down the aisle offering you toasties, and I didn't know what it was, and I was like, I just need some sleep. And so they handed me this ham and cheese toasty, and it was delicious. So be making toasties for the rest of my life because I thought that was so cool.
No, you will not.
No.
I hate toast.
Oh, keen is a word that's a little more well known too, maybe like in England, Europe. Yeah, or like you want to do it, like are you keen to go somewhere? But it's also that. Rubbish was another word we heard a lot.
Just like this is crap.
Oh, kind of, but it's actually trash. So when they come up and down the aisle on the airplane, instead of saying, do you have any garbage or do you have any trash, they just go, rubbish, 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 and they just keep saying it, rubbish, rubbish, rubbish.
Rubbish bins. That's what
Yeah, and everything was a rubbish bin. There were no trash cans. Like, if you asked for a trash can, it was like a weird, you know, oh, you're a tourist look. But everything was a bin. That was super cool. Takeaways? Takeout, yeah. So the first place we went, I said, can I have a to-go box? And they didn't have a to-go. It was the fancy dinner night where we were all asleep. And they said, we don't have a takeaway license. I was like, I don't know what that means. Can I take this with me? Like, it's really good, but I can't eat it because it's still supposed to be breakfast time. And so takeaway, we quickly learned, was our to-go food. So we would take it away with us.
In some places you couldn't.
In some places you
had
couldn't.
to have a takeaway license in order for you to do
Yeah.
takeout. Like,
And it
so
was
we
the
couldn't take
best
takeout.
chicken schnitzel I've ever had. But I couldn't take it away with me because they had no license and they would get in trouble if I tried to take food with me. So I didn't take it, but it was really good. And I was confused by that too because schnitzel I thought was German, which I do think it is. But there was a heavy influence because a lot of places we went, that was what was on the menu, lots of schnitzel. And the last one's a ripper. So they don't say it like that.
It's like
Ripper.
fun. It's swell, I guess.
Kind of. A ripper, like, it's usually like something that was really funny or really interesting. Like if somebody's telling you a story, you would be like, oh, that's a ripper. And it's like a good one. That's a good one. So we had so much fun just learning all these words. And Sheila and I both had our notebooks, and every time we'd get one, we would write it down. Do you have some
Your
more?
underdecks.
Oh, underdecks. Underdecks.
Your decks. You have your decks.
So
And then
decks
you
are your pants, and then
your
underdecks are,
underdecks.
Yeah.
Your underdecks.
which we thought was so cool.
Whoop whoop. Whoop whoop.
Oh, I missed the whoop whoop.
Whoop whoop means far away. So if
So like
something's
it's a
borrowed,
whoop whoop from
it's
here.
a whoop whoop from here.
It's a whoop whoop from here. That's, I gotta add that.
Yeah, and trading hours, so they don't say when their hours, when stores don't say when they're open or closed, it's not, it's their trading hours.
And they do not have trading hours like we have in America.
Yeah,
Their hours,
is at 5 o'clock.
yeah, their hours are their hours. Like we're not working overtime. We're not staying open just to convenience some of you. Like we work 9 to 5 and then the doors close and we go home and we do whatever we want to. But there were lots of times we couldn't find a restaurant that we wanted, or if we wanted to go buy touristy stuff, all of those stores were closed by the time we got out of our schools. So it was really interesting because we just assumed, like when we went to the food court in the mall, the stores would still be open, but only the food was there, and it was more fast food, not like sit-down restaurants. But at 5 o'clock, their trading hours are really done for the day, which we appreciated, you know, for them. But as tourists, we wanted to do all the things and try to fit it all in. Just a couple more slides. I just want to show you some of the beautiful things. They called their car line, y'all will appreciate this, kiss and go. So like when you pull the kids up, you kiss them and you turn them out. You don't like worry about, do you have your lunch? Do you put your book bag on? Like it's a kiss and go. Like you got to get them out of the car. We played netball, or we saw some kids playing netball, but they don't have backboards, which was new. And there were different rules about dribbling and passing, so we learned that. All of the stairs, almost every set of stairs in every set of school had beautiful messages up and down that were encouraging, or math facts or something. Like they used their space so well.
That's what I was gonna say, they use their space, like all of the floors, even outside at the primary schools, they were like one of them had chutes and ladders,
Yeah.
and then they were just all divided up, every space was used.
It was all intentional and all outside. So like in America where we have, like when you get in the front door, then you can go all through the school more so. These places were like perimeter blocked. So like once you got in, it was all open on the inside. You didn't have like doors to get to different buildings. Well, that's not true. You had doors to get to different buildings, but like
There's lots of outdoor space.
there was lots of outdoor space and it wasn't all locked down. It was
Most
very
schools,
safe.
And all schools, they wore uniforms. Everybody
Yeah.
wore uniforms, and with the uniforms, they all got hats. They all got little,
Yes.
those little hats because it's so warm.
And the sun,
and
there's
sun-
protection.
Yeah, especially in Cairns, it was like that, but yeah, everybody wore uniforms in there.
The art and the culture and the heritage. This mural right here was on the outside of our hotel. I mean, I just thought that was amazing. Like it wasn't just an art district, or it wasn't just one part of the city. All of the schools, this was a school mural. This koala was just on a random building in Sydney. Like they just take such pride and priority in their art and making sure that it's bright and colorful and beautiful and that it tells a story. So these panels told a story. They were in one of the classrooms. So that was another highlight, was just seeing all of those beautiful things. Here's a didgeridoo. I will... And he could do it forever. The video goes on for like a whole minute, but he did it for probably 10 minutes. Like it's a combination of, they told us, like breathing out, but it's also the vibration of your voice too that does it. So that was a really neat. None of us had ever experienced that before, so that was pretty cool to see. And the connection to the world was one of my favorite parts. So everything was like, this was in the airport. I mean, it wasn't just like, you know, certain places and certain people that believed it. Like in the airport it said, find it great and leave it greater. Like everything's just about making the world better and using the sustainability that we have and making the, you know, the ecosystems or the world, nature around us, like making it all better. Everyone was welcome everywhere we went. It was just such a feeling of belonging and inclusion. And then dreaming is what they call their origin story. So not like dreaming like we think, like when you sleep, but this is those who lose their dreaming, meaning like their place or their purpose or how they got here. So everything, even this was a dreaming. This is the whale dreaming. So it's all about how things originate and how they got there and your part in it. So it's really neat. And then here's my, just my ending thought is like, how can we get other people the same opportunity? So how can other teachers from Allegheny County get to take these opportunities to get to go and have an immersion program somewhere else in the world? So
And that's what we talked a lot about, and you didn't have pictures from when we cruised in Sydney Harbor.
yeah.
And did that, but even, and going and seeing an opera at the Sydney Opera House, I mean, we were always pinching ourselves going, I mean, so I'm from Stokes County, which is only slightly larger than Allegheny.
Yeah.
Which I think we played y'all last night. You know, and so we were pinching ourselves going, how were we able to get the opportunity to do this? What an amazing opportunity for us, and that's why it's so important for us to bring it back to other people, is because it's like we were so blessed to be able, I mean, like going to the Great Barrier Reef, there's only a small fraction of people in the world who will ever get to experience the Great Barrier Reef firsthand. And for you from Allegheny and for me from Stokes County, I mean, that was just, you know, we were just blown away.
It was, yeah,
And we do want to let other, you know, would be nice if other people, you know, could have that opportunity.
definitely. And so the scholarships, mine came from a Rotary group, but just, you know, if you have a connection or you think that that's something that you would be willing to help me fundraise for, I would love to see other teachers from Allegheny have that experience and get to go. Also Ashland, Watauga, our surrounding counties, of course, too. But Sheila and I were both the first in our counties to get to go, and honestly, neither one of us knew about it until we were offered the opportunity to do it. So we've got to get the word out, and we've got to be able to let teachers know that these things are available and that they can.
And there were
have
people
these
there who weren't
programs.
regional teachers of the year.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
there were lots of teachers. I mean, everybody was a teacher, 45 teachers, so everybody was a teacher, but they weren't all, you know, a lot of them had applied in different ways, and were selected to go. But any teacher, it would be amazing for you.
But thank you for being here, and thank you for listening to my Australia stories. I'm so glad I got to share it with each of you. And thank you, Sheila, for adding to and making it even better. And Margot and Sam, that's my mission. You got to add it to your travel list. Someday, you've got to go. You've got to go. Because and Sheila and I thought, like, we'll never go back. Like, that's what we kept saying everywhere we went. Like, it was such an amazing experience that we got to be there in the first place. There won't be a time in my life where, I mean, there's so many other places I want to see, but just to know that that was our one chance to go. We wanted to fit in everything that we could, because it's not easy to get over there, and I don't know that I would do it again if I could, but it was absolutely amazing. So any questions, or help yourself to anything up here you can come look or feel or touch it.